Hello, welcome in.
Oh,
This is this is an overlay. Welcome in. This is a debrief on the Far Light.
Far Light
Penteract.
Penteract.
That one, Far Light Penteract, which is possibly coming to GM's Guild.
GM's Guild, yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I've got to run it with my other group as well. So I run a Descent to Avernus with another group, who we've been on a hiatus from that game for a while because people have had exams and stuff, and also there's no commitment because we're not streaming it, so it's just like organizational nightmare. But when I'll eventually run that for them with some of the feedback from here and some, having run it once, I know what to change now, what I would do differently. And then, eventually I'll hopefully one day publish this as something you can buy.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
With a custom soundtrack.
Well, I was going to ask, is it going to have the soundtrack?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's like one of the biggest reasons for me to do this is so I can have like, if no one's going to hire me to make music for something, I'll do my own project and make music for that.
I'll pay myself.
When you initially
It'll
said
be
this,
great.
It was like, this is what I'm going to do. This is going to be that. And I'm going to make music for it. It's like, yeah, I ran out of time and I was really ambitious and we didn't get to music for it. And it was just like, no. Yeah. I just wanted
and I have, I've downloaded like an enormous amount of music software in the last couple of weeks or so. And there's so much cool, creepy stuff in there. There's so much cool, creepy stuff. There's like choral textures, which is like thousands of voices going like, you can build up and like making crescendo at your own. And it's great. It's going to be exquisitely creepy.
Yeah.
I would love to
That
see
sounds
this made
horrifying.
to port it over to Call of Cthulhu as well, because it's just that right amount of creepy.
Yeah, no, the actual dungeon, like the structure of the dungeon could potentially be system agnostic.
Yeah.
In the sense that, you have the idea of what is in each room and how you make that mechanically make sense. I'll write it for 5e because that's just the system I know the best. But then you could be adapted fairly straightforward.
Pan's Labyrinth, like a cult Pan's Labyrinth type thing.
Yeah.
That you wander into could work for Call of Cthulhu as a thought.
Definitely.
So, what was the initial concept? I've got to ask that.
The initial concept was not actually mine. So, full disclosure, the idea of setting I had already been into like extra dimensional stuff. Just on one of these, you go on these YouTube dives that just like some topic takes your interest and you just watch video after video after video. I did that on like Dimensions. And, this extra dimensional stuff. There's actually an app you can get called 4D Toys, which is essentially a toy box like a kid would play in with like balls and cubes and whatever, but it's 4-dimensional objects, which you can only see in 3D because it's, you can't actually see 4D stuff, but you can actually move them around and they interact with each other, and it's all mathematically sound, apparently. I actually just wonder if I have it installed.
It's very confusing. I watched a video where people were playing with 4D toys, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
And then they
It's cool.
explained it on like 3 and 2D levels, and I kind of understood.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I went
really.
through. Yeah. And so then later on, I saw a post on Reddit, on like the like it was there's a dungeon master's like tools, like advice for dungeon masters, and like, oh, here's this homebrew monster I created that you can maybe use in your games, and here's something else, and someone put this idea up of a dungeon set in a penteract, and like he described the idea of like these like switches which switch between rooms, and every room is in 2 tesseracts at the same time. But the dungeon that he described was just a random like, in this room there is a beholder, in this room there is this thing. There was no like theme.
It was a dungeon crawl dungeon.
It was a dungeon crawl dungeon, which was like,
Had no-
that's cool, But I want to take this idea, this sort of extraterrestrial dungeon, and like put a real horror spin on it, and like sort of really lean into the cosmic horror aspects of, you know, because non-Euclidean space is like, yeah, non-Euclidean space is like a real hallmark of eldritch horror. And so I'm inspired by a lot of things like Bloodborne or the SCP wiki, if you've heard of that. Yeah,
you can spend hours out there, dude.
Yeah.
It's so
yeah,
good.
and like I what I love about this is that maybe eventually I might even write like an SCP entry about this dungeon, but in a modern day, like these researchers find this space and they go through, and it's like the initial entry is just like, oh, we just found this strange well that time seems to speed up around it. But then you go into the addendums, and he's like, well, that's nothing. And then you go into the addendums and like the logs of the journey into, and you see all the weird shit that goes on inside. And that's the kind of stuff that I was really inspired by. Like, the more it seems strange, but not too bad at first. And then the more you venture in, the more weird and off-putting. And then something just doesn't right. And then, oh, there's this thing here. And oh my God, like, it just gets worse as you venture further in. And more, it starts to reveal itself more and more and more.
Yeah, no, that was insane.
So yeah, there's that was the initial concept. I can't remember where I came across the idea for light, but I think it was more a case of horror is. I think it was me wanting to subvert the. I remember, actually. Now I remember. So another staple of cosmic horror is ignorance is bliss. Ignorance is bliss, because once you know something, like knowing the eldritch truth destroys your mind. And I thought the allegory for that is the safety and comfort of darkness, where you don't see anything around you. Ignorance is bliss. But the light is blinding and corrupting. And once you see it, it's just like, it's horrible. That was so... I kind of alluded to it with the village. And they were like, you know, oh, no, we just want to stay in the dark. We don't want our eyes. We just want to remain blissfully ignorant and not think about that horrible thing. And that the darkness is kind of like that kind of an allegory. Yeah, so the comfort in the darkness and not knowing. Yeah, and also the flipping of expectations of, you know, like, oh, in fantasy and other things, like, the darkness holds the spooky monsters. But now, the darkness is the good thing, and the light is the bad thing, and it's kind of an inversion of that.
I think the first episode of this group was like, was it the light is not our friend, or the darkness? I think
the light, the darkness is your ally.
Episodes, yeah.
Yeah, that was the warning of the first message. That's like, the hook.
The episodes were named after.
Yeah. Another big inspiration for this was the film Annihilation, if you've seen that.
Oh, yeah, that one's...
The idea of an eldritch force, like, corrupting and twisting biological matter and morphing it into something weird and different. So in that film, there's this space, there's this, like almost like a exclusion zone where a meteorite hit the Earth. And inside the space, like, biology is weird and warped. You see flowers with, like... plants with like multiple flowers of different species growing out of each other, and you see like there's this horrific bear monster which is like fused with a human in a strange way, and there's like you go around, you see like plants which have grown in the shape of people, but were they plants or are they people, and you're not sure. And it's like that kind of like weird twisting of biology as well, which is I took heavy inspiration from in terms of the effect of the light.
You mentioned the town. I'm really curious about the story of that town. So Reservoir was hypothesizing that just based on what we read, Mordenkainen found this town. He found this weird like mine within the town, all the craziness going on, and then basically brought it to this location, somehow made permanent that magic bubble of darkness, and then the residents of the town that we met were just descendants from that original town who had adapted to the darkness.
Exactly. So you've pretty much got the long and short of it. Essentially, there is an element of So he found the town, and Yshtara, the Arcanoloth, was Tara, the researcher who he met in disguise, who, much like he hypothesized, had cast Nystul's magic aura on herself for a year, so that she wouldn't be detected as fiendish. And she was researching this place, and he came across it. Because, the story would go in this strange village, which is unheard of. But, merchants would come to the town, they'd go there, sell their wares, come back a year later, and the children were adults.
Mm-hmm.
And no one could explain why. And the people in the village, they was like, I saw you a year ago, and I saw you like 30 years ago, and you've not aged a day. What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
So and it was like this weird. So that's what drew the attention of Mordenkainen, the ruler of this town, and in particular, the residents realized it was the more intense near the mine. So this town was actually doing very well for itself with its exports, because people would go in the mine to mine tin or copper or whatever it happened to be, and they'd spend a day in there mining, and they'd come out and an hour had passed, and they're like, you're amazing, you're mining so fast, where does this strength come from? Like, we can export so much, we're going to be rich. And that also drew some attention to themselves.
So what was being mined in the mine? Was it that
Just
glowing
mundane
crystal?
Mundane things, and just they happened to come across this structure which was buried there, and it was just like happenstance, just digging, and then suddenly tink. Oh, what's this? Tink, tink, tink.
They delved too deep.
Exactly.
In that delving too deep and in mining stuff, I recently came across something on YouTube where a mining company came across essentially an underground chamber, and a flooded chamber. They got rid of all the water from the chamber, and inside were all these giant crystals, like 100-foot sized massive crystalline structures, which had formed over thousands of years.
I've seen that as well, yeah.
From the water in the cavern, which they just flooded, they took out. But the conditions was perfectly for making these things, but it was poisonous for them. Anyway.
So is the town permanently in Avernus, or does it move with Mordenkainen's power?
Essentially, Mordenkainen levied some, without giving too much away, because I did try to tie it into the story of a descent to Avernus somewhat. He levied part of the ability for cities to be called into Avernus so the light god went awry. They were researching, they were halfway through building this machine, and then there was an outbreak, and essentially the population caught it, and it was like, we don't know, this is an absolute nightmare. This could, if it spreads to the trees, it could spread through the grass, it could spread, there's no telling how far it would spread. So in a moment of just panic, he invoked this pact, this magic, had the village drawn into Avernus, and activated the sphere.
That could be
but
anywhere.
in doing so, so that whole island, that whole floating island was what was ripped out of the material plane, and now it's just floating there. So you went there and you saw these decaying trees, these fossilized trees. And they're not fossilized because they were dead, they're fossilized because they've been there thousands of years. Because what happened in some interaction between planar transport and the time of this thing, thousands of years just passed in an instant for the village. And so by the time they showed up in Avernus, all the residents had devolved into Grimlocks. Which, in D&D lore, Grimlocks were formerly humans who were enslaved by mind flayers and forced to live in darkness so long that they just lost their eyes and they lost the ability to see. And the same thing happened with the residents of this village. They became Grimlocks over centuries, which happened in an instant.
I missed that connection. I I love Grimlocks. But what I mean, but it could be anywhere, as in this could be moved into any campaign.
Yeah, no,
and
it's definitely it's not meant to be Avernus specific. When I eventually do write this thing, I'm going to do a short like mini introductory campaign, and the dungeon's going to be like the end point. So a bit like Tomb of Annihilation, where you start in Chult, and then there's like the journey through the jungle, and then eventually you find yourself at the main meat and bones of the adventure, which is the dungeon itself.
Yeah.
And similarly, it's going to start with like rumors of this strange village where, people seem to age 30 years, and they've, there's like this exporting of tin. Like, you could slot it into a long-running campaign, but it's just like going up to a barkeep and saying, what are the rumors around town? Oh, I heard tale of this weird village up north where they age really, really quickly, but they export like it's where we get all our tin from. It's things like that, like cooks to like interest people, and then
Well, one
eventually
piece of advice I would give is that if there's going to be an introductory campaign before you run this campaign, maybe have not just Mordenkainen, but it can be transposed to any of your major story hook players.
It's not. In the actual campaign, it's not going to be Mordenkainen.
Cool.
It's going to be an Archmage, titled the Archmage of Far Light, but he's going to have a real name. Y'shtar is going to be in the adventure. Y'shtar was my own creation.
Yep.
But just Mordenkainen was already sent to Avernus, so it's just me kind of like slotting it together neatly.
Yep.
I see.
But I was just thinking using that character to run go and check this out for me, come back. And when they come back, they get the actual introduction to the actual dungeon.
Yeah. So the way I want to structure the initial campaign is people are going missing in this village.
Mm-hmm.
People go into the mines, and they come out feeling funny, and then they go missing. And so the reason why they go missing is because the Archmage and Y'shtar are essentially taking them away and killing them to stop the spread of the infection. And they're going to be presented as like this really benevolent like presence in the town. They're doing like lots for the town. They're like healing the wounded, and because they do generally like want to help. That's something they're not villains, and they're not necessarily like purely good. They are practical, and they want to stop this thing. And so they help the town. They're kind. They like provide. But then if there's a threat, they are brutal about executing it. They are brutal about so they will someone comes back and they says like, oh, I kind of feel funny. It's like, wait, did you see? Was he glowing? Was that right? And then all of a sudden he's missing. He's just gone. And then no one can find him.
Can I
and,
say it? For the greater good.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. Exactly.
For the greater good.
And so eventually it'll be a case of like this mystery, like the whodunit kind of mystery, or was it the baker? Was it maybe the Archmage, or was it like the butcher? Why are people missing? And eventually as they explore and they kind of like research, more cosmic horror things happen. They run into some monster in the woods that is like a twisted one of the biological twisted things, like an animal that got transformed somehow. And then they're in the sitting down, in an evening's rest, and there's the northern lights just appear in the sky, but there's like faces in the northern lights, and it's what's that about? And there's creepy things start happening as people start going missing, and eventually it builds and builds and builds and builds, and all the time there's this mine, and you're not, the players say do not go in the mine, you must not go in the mine under any circumstances, but they what's in the mine? They'll never know what's in the mine. And so eventually that's when it's the you can't know, but I have to know.
Yeah.
Feel that. That was strong.
Yeah.
We ran this at like 9th level. What is your intended when it's finally finished?
9 to 11.
So
Is
still
it?
equal
Is it?
health.
So it's
You
like
were
an
on the
end game.
you were on the lower boundaries of the balance, but you also had a few strong magic items. You're a party of 5 as well, and I kind of balanced that out by having Yashtara be a more active role in helping you as well. There are some of the monsters I've designed are CR 15, 16, the Behemoth, Mordenkainen, or at least the Archmage, is very high CR. Because he's got some very strong spells and he's got extra capabilities thanks
Legendary
to
actions.
the legendary
So,
action which comes from the
could that
parasite.
behemoth have been slayed? Like, was that a possibility?
In very specific circumstances.
No.
So let me bring up the behemoth. I wanted to design like another aspect of horror in 5e, which I think falls flat. Number 1, there's too much lore. The death of cosmic horror is exposition. So you go into 5e and there's these books on there's like wiki articles on all these elder evils, Atropos, Father Limerick, like all these horrific entities from the far realm and outer space, and it's their like detailed history and motivations and like what they look like, and it's just like, well, they're not scary now, they're documented. So the Far Light, what it is, I don't know. I'm not going to write it. I haven't even thought about what the true nature of this light is, and I don't intend to ever know, because you're not meant to know. It's just a force. And so what it is, you can see its effects on people, on places, on biology and stone and nature, but what the actual light is, up to interpretation. I'll put in in the book, like, you can decide for yourself if the light has a source, but I would suggest otherwise.
Well, that does take off, or that does rather answer one of my questions.
What is the light?
Yeah, because there was that journal where there were all of these like names, and basically like could be this one, could be that one, but no.
That was kind of my way of essentially indicating that this is something unknowable. Like I deliberately had a thing where like, oh, here's all these listed elder evils that people know about. This isn't one of them.
But it doesn't fit. Yeah.
It doesn't fit. This is unknown.
Okay, here's a question for you. Sorry, Karsh?
Yeah.
Go.
So just to get back to the behemoth. Regeneration. The behemoth regains 20 HP at the start of its turn. This trait doesn't function if the behemoth starts its turn completely immersed in magical darkness. Behemoth dies only if it starts its turn with 0 and doesn't regenerate. So the
we
only
would
way
have
to
had to slay it and put it in darkness.
Yeah, and put it in darkness, yeah. I originally, I'm not sure if I want to keep that or just make it like unkillable by HP damage. Because the idea of the behemoth is it's kind of like a tyrant from the old Resident Evil games.
I see.
So the point I was getting back to, 5e fails in horror for 2 reasons. One is it because everything is documented and known. The other is because everything is killable.
Yes.
You can kill this, so you don't need to be afraid. You just need to be strong and brave. But if you can't kill it, your only option is to run. And that's... The dungeon is designed... The way the design of the dungeon, because all the rooms are interconnected in certain ways, wherever you go in this dungeon, there is a room in every Tesseract where you walk into, and the behemoth could just show up. And so... There's always that fear of, like, he could be around the corner. This unstoppable monstrosity that could just destroy and, can't be killed. And so that's another horror aspect. And so, there's places you could have gone. For instance, like that drop, so there was that drop you saw briefly where you dropped a thing down, and it was like it's essentially like what it is if you think about like how it works, like if you walk in one direction, you'll end up back where you started because it's like a loop. It's just that, but up and down. So some parties, some like crazy D&D players might be like, oh, I fun, this is just like Portal, I jump in the hole, and they'll be like, wee, 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 and someone will feather fall me and catch me and pull me out, it'll be fine. Until the behemoth appears halfway through down the tunnel, clawing up the walls, and then tries to grab you as you're falling.
Oh man, that's so fun!
Omega's just mentioned for 5e does Ravenloft Horror with Darkened Dungeon supplement. It adds stress system to the game.
Is that the new Ravenloft book, or is that a homebrew?
I haven't looked at the 5e Ravenloft.
It's a Darker Dungeon supplement. I might have a look at that actually. I'll
Thank you, Omega, for that.
But I've got some a little bit of background in Ravenloft from second edition, where it really was able to turn that D&D into something a bit more. Although again, with your thing about like everything's killable, everything, you always have that chance. In second edition, there was much less of that in AD&D games. There were things where you just had no chance, even though yes, technically they were killable. The odds were so much more reduced that things were practically unkillable. So running away was much more of an option back then than the current systems. So when they added something like a vampiric mist as a monster, essentially you go out in the mist and you lose your levels. Like in the fog, that's it. So Ravenloft style might work as well onto that.
To take a trope from the whole horror genre, to emphasize the behemoth as a big giant thing you can't escape from, maybe have like another party's gone into, seen the message, gone in, and you run across a person trying to escape and a hand grabs it, pulls it back in.
Yeah, I'd consider something like that. I didn't quite know how to implement it narratively. I thought not so much a person, but just like some fiend that had wandered in. Like that's kind of like what I wanted to convey with the Hezru as well. So the Hezru you fought in the cage was in the advanced stages of Farlight sickness. And
I definitely feel that with the Hezru, it is very that was really, I'll be honest, I was really like, kind of screwed up, messed up. I think that it would hit a lot, like especially because the Hezru is obviously there because we're in Avernus, right? It's fiends and stuff like that. Yeah, that Hezru could be some like an NPC that they care about. That Hezru could be somebody else. That could be a person that's extremely like
could be a child from the town.
That's a bit too dark, but certainly
Mayor Sheriff or someone along the lines.
Someone that's the person that's missing, right?
Certainly an NPC that had gone like the last NPC to have gone missing from the town. Certainly.
Yeah. I feel,
and it doesn't even need to be like malicious. It could, like my interpretation would be like, we're keeping him here and we're trying to cure him, but we can't find how, and he's just getting worse.
I would say someone power, someone in position. To get that connection, even someone that asked them to come there, or they've had lots of interactions. Like a mayor or a sheriff, where are you
playing Far Light Sickness? Like, so when Far Light Sickness was happening, right, it wanted to spread to everybody else on its own, but the thing about that is that since there's like a parasite or something like of the sort, would you think that it'd be like, is because to me, like when we're playing, because you're not explaining what Far Light Sickness is like exactly, right? You only know the mechanical benefits, you're not explaining the backstory. Would you say that you could play Far Light Sickness in like multiple different ways? To where it's like, so for example, like if you have the NPC there and like he just, imagine the NPC just wants to get out. Just wants to get out. Doesn't know why, but just wants to get out. And it's the parasite trying to get out to spread the sickness further ahead, right? Like it's actually
possibly,
like a conscious almost thing like that. Like
that's something I would consider, yeah.
Although I do
kind of want to play it as more alien, as more like not so much intelligent, but just because again, if you hint at a sort of intelligence, you're kind of getting into motive.
Yeah.
Like, does
yeah.
it want to spread, or is it just a force that is spreading?
That's
And
yeah.
so
Parasitic.
that is, yeah.
And that leads
essentially.
back into the whole story of Cosmic Horror. Cosmic
Yeah,
Horror
yeah,
is
it's-
just cosmic. It doesn't.
Has no
Yeah,
motive.
It's
It just
beyond,
exists.
beyond
It-
comprehension. It's just
it's
the
there.
cruel, uncaring universe.
I
which
like
works
the,
really well in this campaign.
I like the idea of having their introduction to Far Light Sickness be whatever's in that cage, because I think like almost if you see them like if you see someone trying to run away from the Far Light behemoth and it catches them, I don't know, perhaps like it seems like a tiny bit cliche to me too, but also I'm like, find out you gotta run from that thing on your own.
Yeah.
Like, I
Which is
think that was
precisely-
a really
that's-
nice moment of like, wait, this is fine. This is not fine. This is not fine. Nope, I was wrong. This is not fine at all.
Yeah, I definitely
Okay.
think the moment the
It's actually
moment the
it's
players
actually-
think for sure.
It's designed that way. I designed it
Yeah.
specifically to be like a significant threat to scare the shit out of you, but that you could run away from given the right circumstances. For
Yeah.
instance, it's one of the main things it does is it grabs you. It it attacks, and if you are hit, you are grappled. And then while you're grappled, you just take damage at the it can use an attack to just damage you and give you more Firelight Sickness. And you guys ran up to it and you pulled yourselves out of the grapple, but it has an ability where at the start of its turns it rolls a d6, and on a result of 6, or I might do it 5 or 6 depending, not just fully decided on yet, it's incapacitated until the end of its turn as it just writhes and twists and mutates. And if it's incapacitated, it drops you. So it's kind of like there is a chance where even though it's grappling you, it drops you and you have a chance to run. But it's a way to mechanically ensure that it's not just going to TPK you, but without that ability, it had a real threat of TPKing you. But that ability is there to make sure you get the chance to
Mechanically,
run away.
And the darkness definitely helped with that, where it was just
as
like
well.
it didn't care about us if we were in the darkness because it was darkness.
It couldn't
and
sense
it was like,
you.
fuck
It
that.
couldn't sense you.
Yeah.
It can.
from
the
a mechanic.
Behemoth can. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, go
Carry
ahead.
on. The behemoth can sense the presence of any creature afflicted with Firelight Sickness within 300 feet, unless that creature is completely immersed in magical darkness. It's one of its abilities.
That's evil. Mechanically, you could always do a sliding scale that every success. So it's a 6 for the first. If it passes that, it becomes 5, 6. Then 6, 5, 4. And that
the
way,
thing is,
it
I
gives a chance.
really, I started when I first wrote this creature. The sheet was a clutter. It was paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs, and I took a lot of time to cut it down and really try and make each ability as short as possible. So while yes, that could be a good idea, it's going to the time it takes to explain that is going to take several sentences,
Yeah, good
which
point.
already is going to just clutter up the sheet.
It
Probably
could
not,
also
actually.
be level based. Like if they're level 9, you could say happens on a 5 or 6. But if they're level
That's
11,
a bit more.
happens
That's
on
again
a 6.
verbose.
Maybe,
First
yeah.
round 6 and minus 1 to the roll. Each round, as in 6 on the first, 5 or 6 on the second, and yeah.
That's what MLP was saying.
But
I do-
You don't have to say it all. You just say, this ability triggers on a 6. Each round reduces by 1.
But it
Also,
also
I want
gives.
to point out
It's small as
Sorry?
that.
I want to point out this little addendum. So you've seen Maddening Presence. If you fail the wisdom save will be frightened. If you fail by 5 or more, you go mad. That's extended to a lot of creatures in this place. None of you, and if you're mad for the entire minute, you gain long-term madness. Also, Blinding Embrace. A creature grappled by the behemoth must succeed in a DC 17 con save, or take 46 bludgeoning, 46 radiant damage, and 2 levels of Firelight Sickness. On a success, they take half damage and only gain 1 level of Firelight Sickness. If this ability kills a creature, its body is assimilated into the behemoth and can't be recovered by any means short of a wish spell.
Well, we've been talking a lot about Far Light Sickness.
Yeah.
Okay. No, this is one more thing. How many more levels of Farlight Sickness could we have gone up to?
Yeah. Or rather, what level was Mordenkainen at?
10. So,
And
level 1, no visible effect. Level 2, disadvantage. It's kind of like a slower exhaustion with extra stuff in between.
Yep.
And another part of this dungeon I really wanted to play is the balance of this sickness. I don't think you guys got into it enough. I think.
Oh, I think we got into it more than enough.
No, you really didn't. Because I want to find a better way. I want to find a better way to balance the party getting it more and being able to heal from it more.
Yeah, well, that was the thing. I think that we didn't have adequate means of healing it.
Yeah.
For me to not feel like paralyzed
you just didn't know.
Fear.
So up to I think it's up to level 5, spending 10 minutes immersed in magical darkness. The full 10 minutes removes the level.
Yeah.
Yeah, but without
then,
a caster with that.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why I have this. Which is why I have the dump of scrolls at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also resource management, how
they can go quickly.
They can go quickly.
Yeah.
But that's again, that's why.
To remember to give that back to them.
Yeah, that's why also the time chamber. You had Yshtara show you that, but I want to figure out a way of letting the players discover that for themselves. That you can cast darkness on the outside, and spend hours inside to cure more levels at once.
I think that's going to be too complex.
And take a rest. It
No,
is
too complex.
that wasn't complex at all.
My thoughts. I think it's going to be too complex as a puzzle in the dungeon. It's too abstract, I should say, of a puzzle in the dungeon. Having the time stop in that, the time fast and slow. That's my thought.
I think this whole dungeon though is a puzzle.
It is abstract. It is
and
complex.
that's what makes it so amazing. And I think when you take that away from it, you're thinking how do I make more people like this dungeon, which is one way to go about it. But I also think that you're taking away from the specific people who would already love this kind of thing.
It's not a
Yes,
dungeon
Del,
for
I know
the
you
regular
like-
people. You
I
have to
think-
choose your
Yeah.
party for it.
I think the parties that would really enjoy this dungeon are the ones that are risk averse. Parties that are very risk averse in this dungeon would thrive because they would love all the puzzles. They would be terrified of the Farlight Behemoth, obviously, because they would run instead of fighting it straight up, right? Because our party, we're pretty risk averse, to be honest.
The also idea would be to make even the most non-risk averse party risk averse.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Exactly.
There's a lot of deadly shit in here. So the sickness. Level 1, no visible effect. Level 2, disadvantage on ability checks. Level 3, you gain an extra 10 points when healed, but you shed 5-foot dim light. 4, speed reduced by 10. 5, 10 feet of dim light, and you are resistant to radiant damage. Level 6, disadvantage on attack rolls. Level 7, your speed is halved, but you regain double from healing. So there's almost an incentive to get higher, because you get more healing, but at the same time, that's the trade-off. At level 8, you are immune to radiant and resistant to all damage except psychic.
But that's after only 8 hours in the dungeon, without.
That's,
No.
it progresses.
That's really super quick.
Yeah,
I mean-
but then again, if that's also a reason to not, a reason why short rest and long rests are going to. It's not going to happen guaranteed. It's a charisma save every hour, and also after every combat with something
Which
with
has it.
Firelight, which has it. It starts at DC 10, and I think the more I'm working on a way of maybe that goes up, the more people in the party have it, or depending on
the more people you're around, it infects you easier.
So it could be a DC of 5 plus the cumulative levels the party has. But that could explode out really quickly. So maybe not so big, but something like that. I'm thinking.
I think it would.
So,
if it was gonna get worse as it goes on, it should be definitely maybe every 2 rounded down or something. Like it could be like that
Yeah.
or something.
Possibly. Level 9. So level 8, you're resistant to all damage except psychic and immune to radiant. At level 9, you are permanently affected by power word pain. Essentially. As, you know, which is what the Hezru was. You shed 10 feet bright light and further 10 feet dim light. So which that means is you have disadvantage on all ability checks or saving throws except Constitution. You can't cast spells. You there's a bunch of like debuffs. It's essentially you're in constant agony. And then at level 10, which is you met Mordenkainen at the cusp of between levels 9 and 10, and then when you fought him, he went to level 10, which is when you are taken over by this Far Light parasite, which is the force of whatever it is seizes control of you.
So, sorry.
That could have, and I have a stat block for this parasite, which is half a stat block and half a template you can put onto anything.
Like you put it onto Mordenkainen with his abilities.
Yeah. So I put it onto Mordenkainen with his abilities. Or if any of you were to progress to that level, I'd put it on you with your abilities. And the party would be fighting you.
That would be fun.
So I'm curious. I think we kind of determined, or we're at least hypothesizing at some point, that all of the beings, like the Far Light Seer and the other creatures within this area, were once just people who had been infected with the sickness.
Exactly.
Would Mordenkainen, if he had like completed that transformation, been through all that, would he have been more or less powerful than the Far Light Seer?
Far Light Seer is pretty powerful. I say I don't
because
have
it's
a mechanic.
based on what they were in the real life.
Yeah,
correct?
I don't have a hard and fast mechanic for when it progresses. So basically, level 10 you get taken over. Level 11 you transform into something. Either the weakest creatures become this like plasma, become this just pure light, which is essentially what the behemoth is, times like a collection of fused together. Some become like the flaming skeleton, which is actually a creature which I took from the Tome of Beasts. It's called what is it called? Bestiary. It's but then I thought, like, okay, in the original lore of this creature, it's like an emissary from the heavens sent to like scorch the earth and spread the message of like destruction. But I took the creature and like, okay, this is just something with an affinity for fire which had been corrupted and transformed. It was called I had like a list of things.
I think
filter
that
by. Oh yeah. Also, what I did is I went on like, I got like the list of like all the creatures in the Monster Manual and Tome of Beasts and all this supplementary and a few homebrew books, and I filtered by immunity to radiant damage to see like what cool things showed up, and this was one of them. So immunity, radiant. A lot of it was like angels, and that didn't fit. It was one of the monsters I didn't get to show you was Aurora Horribilis, which is a large aberration, which is essentially a ribbon of light. It's what I said, the ribbon of light with like screaming faces in an aurora, with abilities like incorporeal movement, reality adjacent, void song, and blistering touch. Like
reality
Tome of Beasts
adjacent.
Yeah, Tome of Beasts was a huge inspiration as well, because they have a lot of cool aberrations in their book. There was... it was the Malakbel, it was called, which is it's a fiend in the original book, but blistering radiance is its ability. Generates a 30-foot radius aura of searing light and heat. A creature that starts its turn within 30 feet of it, or for the first time on a turn, takes 2d10 radiant damage in 30 feet of this thing. And one of its abilities is intensifies that aura for 78 radiant damage and a level of exhaustion. In fact, that was an original inspiration for the sickness, because it was like this light, this burning light that gives you exhaustion. What if I swapped out the originally Far Light sickness was going to be exhaustion, but that's too brutal. That's like, it's too quick, and it's not thematic enough. So I developed my own like extended light version of exhaustion with these added things and with this transformation at the end. And yeah, so that was an inspiration. Yeah, a bunch of stuff. There's an aboleth in this dungeon you never saw.
Before we get, I knew there was an aboleth. You hinted it in the water, and I was like, yeah, I know what that is.
I hate those.
Aboleths. I ran a whole campaign where the aboleths were the big bad guys. I'm like, oh, that's bad. So
and it's an aboleth which had undergone the transformation, but like accepted it. So it had like
of course it would.
kept its physicality, but its mind was just like a hive mind. It had like connected its aboleth hive mind to whatever this force was.
I am so glad that we did not go in that water.
Yeah, it wouldn't have immediately attacked you, but it would have tried to share its knowledge with you, and in the process feeble-minded you.
Destroy you.
Were you just like, what? How many different ways can I feeble-mind people in this dungeon?
It's thematic. It's so thematic because it's like the eldritch truth. Your mind rejects it and returns to the darkness.
Yeah. So before we talk about maps, and because that's a whole thing I'm sure you want to talk about, and mapping, one thing, safeguards. Was the book like with the details of like the more sick you get, the more knowledge you get to read through the book?
Oh, I have questions about that.
Was that one
too.
of the safeguards?
Yeah. So
and how is that going to work when you have abilities like Eyes of the Runekeeper from?
Yeah. So that was a little bit of an off the cuff decision, not something I'd pre-planned, because I was thinking like I need to when you're creating for dungeons, you have to there's some things you just have to tell the players.
Yeah.
You have to, you can't like, if you hint at something, or if you like, give them a clue, most of the time you won't pick up on it because their mind is not thinking where you are. So you just have to straight up tell them the puzzle, the solution to the puzzle. And they go and they think, and it's almost like they've worked it out. It's like subconsciously. It's like, oh, there's the solution. I figured it out. But actually, the DM just told you, but he let you think you figured it out. That's a big. That's not just for this dungeon, but that's just dungeon 5e tabletop RPG design just in general. In fact, there's also something I read called the Rule of 3, which is if you want your party to know a fact, put 3 things in the area they're exploring, which just straight up tells them. And so eventually they'll find one of them. In fact, another resource I used when designing this and looking for advice is it's called the Alexandrian. The Alexandrian.net, which is in fact also they're doing a remix of Sent to Avernus, which fixes a lot of problems that I have with it, which I wish I had seen from the beginning. But they also do like. They did some like stuff on dungeon design and like structure and like tips like that, and so the book was, I wanted to have something which gave you the information about the backstory of this place, which gave you like lore dumps and gave you like hints and like told you like how to counteract the sickness. I was like, how can I let them know without just like giving it away instantly? Like I came up with this idea on the spot where it was like inspired by like the Necronomicon, where the more mad you are and the more inflicted you are, the more you can read, the more knowledge you have. And that was kind of what I was thinking for that. I don't know if I might revise that, just because I don't know if that works so well, but
I was curious about the specific mechanics, because I was like,
basically.
linked to Mordenkainen's or the author's levels of madness?
No, it's yours. So essentially, the book was structured in that there were certain sections, and like past this point you needed to be Firelight level 1 to read it, and past this point you needed to be Firelight level 2 to read it, and then etc. etc. etc.
I guess my question is why, like what
in a story
made
in terms
it...
of story rise or mechanically.
In terms of
Like,
mechanically, like what made it so that you had to be sick in order to read it? And that was where I was like, is it because the author was sick?
So my idea was that, yeah, it was kind of like as he was writing this, you know, he just a little aspect of the because what happened is before he realized it was a problem, he was like, oh, you know, time progresses slowly in here. I could get like days worth of research done in a few hours. This is fantastic. I'm going to set up a study in here. And then as he was writing these things down, it was getting afflicted by the light. The light was seeping into his pen strokes, into the paper, you know, it just gets everything. So that's kind of the thinking. And then the more he wrote, the worse his affliction became until, you know, so that's why you needed to be worse off.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Insight from Bloodborne, if you've played that game. There's this stat you have called Insight, and the more insight you have, the more you can see the true nature of the world around you. And by seeing creepy shit, you gain insight.
So it was
So I thought of
linked
it kind of
directly
like
to
that.
his level of sickness when he wrote it.
Not like directly. It wasn't a case of like he was
Loosely.
3 when he wrote this, so that would be 3. It was just kind of like, this is the information I want blocked off until a later point.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the first bit is just like an introductory paragraph, like a hook, and then the rest is like this level is like, oh, this is what the sickness is. This is how it works. It afflicts. It spreads. It grows. Oh, that's bad. How do we stop it? I can't read it. And then the next thing is like, here's how you stop it. But there's also something else. There's this thing, and like, oh, what's about that thing? And I can't read it.
It's incentive. It's another incentive to gain more.
That's your incentive.
Exactly. It's
deeper.
It is the again, what I wanted to play off is this balancing act between the sickness and like there being incentives to get more, not just because you heal more, you gain resistances as well as debuffs, but also you gain access to this knowledge. You gain access to forbidden knowledge at cost to your health and your sanity, which is
mechanically
so nice.
Mechanically, what's going to be a problem is essentially Eyes of the Runekeeper from Warlocks, which is you can read all
I would just
5
say it doesn't work.
Yeah, I don't think that works
I would say
because
it's not
comprehend
writing.
language didn't work.
and but that's still going to be
Exactly.
a problem. People
Is
don't
it?
like being told this does not work when it specifically says this is supposed to work on everything, and that coming from someone that I don't I can see problems with other players.
So what I would say in that, and there's again, every time you gain access to this is something throughout the dungeon. Anytime you are purview to forbidden knowledge, there is a risk of feeble-minded. At first, at like a lower level, it is losing intelligence score, and then the more you do it, the more feeble-minded you are. So I would say to like a rune keeper is that you start to read, and as you make an intelligence save, you can understand it, but make an intelligence save, and it would be that same effect with the runes. On a success, they lose intelligence score, and on a failure, they get feeble-minded.
So I would.
It's also
I would
the same
say
for
putting
like
that in as a safeguard to stop people with that ability to just be able to read it all. And go every time they pass one of those light barriers, as in if you're first level you can do this. If you're second level Farlight things you can do this. Every one of those barriers from the book, they would need one of those checks.
Exactly.
So that would stop that, but I can see that as an issue because players don't
Yeah.
like having an ability which says you can read all the writing. Yes, it's amazing. And then be told by the GM, no, you can't.
I mean, but again,
But that would be the
like
trade-off.
what
I'd say,
happened
oh
with-
yeah, you could
Sorry.
Reservoir. You
Oh.
you
Yeah.
were determined to read the runes on the table.
Yeah.
And so that you said, oh yeah, you read the rune, you read the writing with your eyes of the rune keeper. You read it, and it fills your mind with forbidden and mind-destroying knowledge. Make an intelligence save. That's what it would be.
Yeah.
Like,
But even
yeah, you
just
can read it,
because
and it fucks you up.
yeah, comprehend languages is supposed to make you able to read anything. I think sometimes just saying like, yes, by all of your knowledge, this should work. It doesn't. Can sometimes, like,
That
yeah,
is
you might
also an
have
option.
crappy players who are like, but no, I should be able to. But you might also have, like, in my opinion, a good player is going to be like, oh, by all means, I should be able to, but I can't. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I want to figure that out. So it's not necessarily terrible.
Another
I can see it from
source
both.
of
I'm just saying
like
that,
that
might
kind
be a
of.
problem releasing into the open market.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
going to be it.
But that's just like that's a problem for the players, less for me.
Mhm.
Like if a player kind
Problem
of
for
like
someone else's
there's
GM.
yeah, well, no,
I
exactly.
mean-
But honestly, there's a lot of things like the identify spell is not like I was like, oh, what's this magic artifact, this hidden cursed item that is a big plot hook and it's mystery behind it. I cast identify. I know what it does. Well, no, this is a hook. It's meant to be like enticing. It's meant to be a mystery. It's like, well, I want my spell says I can do this, and then it's same scenario. It's just a shit player. It's just like, no, your spell normally would work. It doesn't this time because this is the mystery. This is the narrative.
Just pointing out, like,
And
to have a
narrative
note.
takes, yeah,
Like when you've got it
Yeah.
all formatted out, have a note. If your players are like going to do like this type of stuff, if they might be very much about I should be able to do this, then this is a way of curbing this.
the consequence would be the intelligence
making
save.
them a consequence.
Yeah.
If your players are going to be okay with it, don't worry. And then, or if they raise the opinion, they raise that, oh, but I should go, well, you think you can push forward, and give them the option of going, like, you think you can push forward, but it may risk. And
It's
that
always
will-
it's always
Exactly.
it's always
That-
on
that's
every
Certainly try.
and every
That's
note you should
exactly.
every
If
footnote
your
you should,
players are shitty.
in every footnote you should put if they want to do it, put these words, say these words to them. Are you sure?
That's what I said to Ava. That's what I said to
To
Ava.
Reservoir.
'Cause she was like, because Ava as well was like, I grabbed that glowing ball.
Oh,
Are you sure?
yeah.
I was like,
Difference is she
yeah,
stopped. I did not.
That's the if you touch that, your mind will be filled with eldritch knowledge, and you'll make a save versus feeble mind. And another example of that, the growing mutated plants. If a druid were to cast speak with plants, intelligence save versus feeble mind.
That's fun. That's so fun, actually.
That's evil. I love it. Actually, what
Get those
would
druids
happen
out of here.
if a druid did the tree transport thing in that room?
I would say that they'd probably take a level of Farlight sickness by going physically through these trees.
Yeah. From a releasing standpoint, no matter what you think a character will do, put in a little paragraph to say, if person does this, then this happens. That way, when the players argue the DM, says, well, it's in the book.
Yeah.
So it's not on the DM's fault. This is
Yeah.
I mean, there's also something to be
Yeah, no,
said for your
I
DM, your god.
tend to think of a lot of these kind of things. Yeah.
Yeah.
I tend
So-
to think of a lot of these things, these interactions.
from a
So-
releasing point of view.
So
if it's
I
not
was like,
written down,
okay,
it doesn't
so
exist.
So
Sorry,
I
go
was like, okay, these plants, they're these grown, mutated, like twisted plants afflicted with the sickness. What would happen if a druid cast speak with plants on it? Well, they'd probably be filled with the mind of the eldritch knowledge of what the light is, and they'd go mad, and they say versus feeble mind. Okay. So it's like, a lot of this dungeon is like, despite it being like labyrinthine, a lot of it is actually follows like steps of logic.
hmm
So like
curious.
so the effect of like the half invisible effect as well comes from like my logic, me logicking out the interaction between like going between different adjacent places. If you see what I mean.
Yeah.
Yep.
When you go past that barrier of where the two join, some on one side, some on the
Just
other
like
side,
your cut.
and you're on the actual right, and you go through essentially the mirror and you cut.
I would say though, going through the dungeon, it's really fun and like it's super cool. But there's a lot of things that I see that like fire sickness and stuff like that. It's to some players it probably feel like a punishment, or like just like being curious. It would feel like they wouldn't want to be curious anymore. But you want them to continue being curious. So I think maybe having like little Skittles around everywhere, like little Skittles to have them, be like, oh, this time nothing happened, but then I got this cool little coin or this cool little item or something like that. Just throwing Skittles everywhere would be really good.
There are rewards. There are secret treasure stashes in this dungeon as well.
We just
didn't find
speed
it.
ran it.
You didn't find it.
Let's go to the map then, shall we?
I mean, we did come across Mordenkainen's chambers. We got some of the treasures there.
I mean, you're meant to come across that. That's
on
like
this
kind of
map
one of the
right
first
now.
places you're meant to go.
What?
Yeah,
let's go to the map.
you're on the map.
So let's just show
So
the
this is
Yeah,
Tesseract 1.
I just want to zoom in because this is where we are. There's a void behind.
Okay.
Is that mapping
Yeah.
or is that something we totally missed?
No, that is.
That's
So
the
if you
astral
recall,
sea.
if you recall, there is that room
Behind.
is broken open. Oh yeah, that was originally where the Shield Guardians were going to be.
Okay, sure, good.
But then I redesigned it so they were upstairs, and that was just like a holdover from that.
Okay. So that's for like level 11s, not level 9s.
No, it was just it's something that these maps I used Dungeon Fog, fantastic tool, but these maps took so much time.
Yeah.
And
That
just
was
like
the other thing, like spruce out Dungeon Fog. How was it used? Like how was it to use? Like I've never used it.
it's a fantastic tool, but I gave myself too much. Like any sane dungeon master would run this theater of the mind. I decided not to do that because I am insane. So
You suffered from
I
Far sickness.
I did. I'm also a perfectionist. So it all had to like fit together like a perfect jigsaw puzzle. All the rooms had to like, it's like, okay, if there's water flowing through here, it would come out in this room over there. But if then it was in this room over there, then that would connect here, and then it's literally like the threads connecting it on the pinboard.
So let's
like
zoom
saying,
out and
okay.
show what you're talking about.
Basically, what I wanted to do, and what I very nearly dedicated a whole wall of my apartment to.
My question is, if you printed out all the maps and you taped them to where they actually lead, would it equal a full circuit, or what is that? There's some repeated parts of the maps and like a lot of the tesseracts.
How do you mean?
Can you? Because
No,
some of the
you
rooms,
can't-
like you think like I'm going this way, but it actually the room is over here. And then if you go up that way, it also leads there, and you're like, how did that happen?
Are there repeated entrances? Is my question. Because like if certain like
so every room there's 40 rooms in total. Minus a few, because some of them are joined together in like one big corridor.
But 80 because they're all doubled, right?
No.
No.
Well, sort of, but each double, it's the same room.
Yeah.
It's not two copies of this room. It's like essentially
It's the same room,
without
but in a mirror.
without thinking of it from like the mathematical, like geographic perspective. It's like
you get a headache.
there's one version of the room which is surrounded by that room, that room, that room, and that room. I flick a switch, and now this room is surrounded by a different room, a wall, and a different room. And so, but that is every room, almost. The only rooms which aren't that are the ones where the lights are broken. In which case, there are two separate rooms of that which lead to different places, but you just can't switch between them. And it's like, for instance, the example if you take a couple D4s, oh no, not even D4s, let's take a couple D6s. And if you say 2 cubes, put them together like that, then this square here is one of the rooms. And it's both in this cube and in this cube at the same time. So you can either go around this cube in a circle, or flick a switch and go around this cube in a circle. Does that make sense?
And
so
then
that's
there are
kind of the
multiple
idea.
ways to get to every room
Oh, I
because of
see.
that.
I see.
Yeah.
Oh man, this is gonna be
Now, speaking
As a-
about
as a DM, it's gonna be rough. to keep
Yeah,
track.
no, that's my biggest challenge actually, is how to explain this to the
Explain it.
DM of who's
Speaking
buying
about
the
the
book.
map, I'll see if I can put it. So, by the way, we're only on, like, when I zoomed out to show, like, this map in Roll20, this
This is
only
one of 10.
One of 10.
10.
And they all move and back together. So, I do want to ask before we go to the map, like the key, because I'm going to bring it up on screen. If I
Yeah.
can find it.
Oh, I actually removed it from.
Okay.
That's one thing. As like, that was kind of like a
we
last
won't
minute.
do
Like, I just want to,
We won't put
I
it
didn't
on screen
prepare.
there.
One thing I wanted to prepare is, which I didn't get the time to, is one of the ideas I had is like finding bits of the map around the place, and then like you see like this is the map for this room, and then this is the map for this room, and then you could like layer them on top of each other, and it slots together. Like so, like in real life, you'd like print it on tracing paper and hand it out to the players, or like very see-through paper, so that they would just be looking at it, and then one day they go, hold on, and they'd hold it up to the light, and they'd see the connections come together. And so for like this, I'd like put it on like a transparent PNG, but like off center. So like it's like, but there's like this shape here, but there's this empty space. Why is there that empty space there? And then there is, where they get another one, there's like, well, this bit's up here, but then there's empty space down here. And then they could like download them and then layer them on top of each other and see it all come together. And so that's an
Can I
idea I
suggest, like,
wanted to do.
marks? Like on this door, it has like an arrow
Yeah.
or a word, or it has something, and then somewhere late in the dungeon you see the same thing, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh wait, those two doors connect.
Exactly, yeah. So
Do not
that's
have a lot of them,
part.
just
So
have a couple.
that's
Yeah.
part of the challenge as well, is that it's a labyrinth. It's there are so many different ways to go through this dungeon.
We speedrun it.
It's
It's
you did speedrun
so
it.
beautiful.
I kind of like almost forced that by Ashe's kidnapping, because
We did need to.
yeah. So I think I'm gonna design that encounter, because my original idea for like the narratively is that this seer, this former, essentially lore-wise, the seer was an archmage who discovered this place before Mordenkainen and did not survive his explorations. And I thought like the journal was actually his and not Mordenkainen's. And that's going to be like a revelation that I might have worked in later.
Actually, I think that works better.
I like that. That honestly makes a lot more
Well, not
sense.
the archmage. It's the seer
Yeah.
instead. Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that oh man, that would be
I mean, a good,
incredible.
yeah, that would be really good. I think adding like pieces of people that not just the Archmage, but like if this has been here for like a while and whatever world it's put into or slotted into, there should be traces of people from like not just the Archmage, but trace people that may have just wandered in there, like even people that disappeared.
Oh
right?
yeah,
The one you're talking
that's
about.
most people.
Definitely
That's most people
traces.
you encounter in this place. Like
Oh, yeah.
that archmage and the sort of glowing figures that surrounded him have been there for millennia.
Mm.
Like because like time just is slow to a halt in here. So whereas in the outside world he disappeared like 50 years ago, in here he's been here for thousands of years, and this is what he's become. And so the logic of his encounter was that he instinctively knows who has the highest intelligence score, and he kidnaps them to try and help. Because what I wanted to get is that I thought about doing this, but then I kind of like a lot of it I was making up on the spot because I hadn't prepared it well enough in advance. But the story is that he can't use the switches. He can't use the lanterns to switch between one or the other, and so he's stuck in where he is. And so he kidnaps the party member with the highest intelligence to try and get them to do it, to teach him how to do it, so he can escape and spread. And so, but then I kind of thought, I only half wrote that scenario, and so it ended up like, okay, but of course they're going to go after him. They're going to try and rescue the party member, which of course, the way I've designed it is that the secret way to the end is through like their lair. You have to go through their lair is the shortcut. So of course they would go up there, and then that suddenly made it like, yeah, if they're kidnapped, then of course the party are going to find the shortcut. So that's probably not gonna happen in future revisions. Which is why you playtest.
Yeah. The map itself, which we're not going to bring up, had like the key had like essentially all the rooms linked.
Oh, why not? It's I'll show it. Why not?
Oh, it was beautiful. It was stunning.
Let's bring this up. Here we go.
100% the DM is going to need to use this exclusively.
So this is the key. This is what we got we found out right at the end, and that's what there's a part of an episode. I think not last one, but the week before.
I need a drink of water. My throat is parched.
No problem. So not last episode, but the one before that.
I'm gonna go refill this beer back.
And that's what there was 10 minutes of dead air almost, because we were like, oh my god, and of course Del was so giddy about oh my god, this is so amazing.
It is,
and it is. It's amazing. So
God, it's so
the key itself is all the dungeons, all the rooms have two entrances and exits, or two versions of each other, and they're linked to different directions. So there's 10 different, essentially, circuits or colors. Tesseracts. I use real language, sorry.
That is a real word.
So there's essentially 10 different dimensions or whatever on top of the whole thing.
Tesseracts. We literally just said it.
Yeah, I know. I know you're doing. And so there's the shortcuts and all through them, but and some things are locked into their own little section. So it's kind of weird, and that's why we that's why we geeked out a couple episodes back, because we saw this for the first time, and it's really weird. It's just getting the idea of, wait a sec, every one of those little things we can change, we can something, and that then opened up everything, because we were just stuck on one of those layers. Tesseracts.
Again,
we got into 3 before we got into 3 Tesseracts before we found this.
That's part of the intended progression of the player's realization of what's going on. So at first they go into this place and it's just well, this is weird. And then, so one thing I want to do is, again, the first room, you kept trying the door. And I realized, I haven't actually given them any reason to go back. So I had I had Kashara say because she can see through darkness, say oh, there's something different, which is that was the clue. But if the party doesn't have an imp, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a clue, a puzzle, which is, I think it was something the way forward when seen in a mirror is the way back, or something like that. And and then in the reflection of the lantern, the way forward is the way back, or something along those lines. And so that clues you into the idea that, wait, if you flick these switches, it goes to somewhere different. And you find yourself in this area, and then the players would presumably explore this area first, and then maybe what you did, and then let's see what happens if you flick this switch. They see the room. Oh, we changed. It's just like before, and then they realize they're in a completely different room, and so it's meant to be a gradual realization, the players kind of figuring it out bit by bit, and then I would
actually have physical mirrors instead of the Tesseracts. I would have physical mirrors that I would just walk through. That's me being the visual person. And the indication it does flip because of the mirroring. That would be
how it is.
Yeah, I mean,
you could always have given that these people might not have a Kashara, you can always say that, like, well, I guess if you aren't planning on doing it in the same way where they're like calling for help, because I would say that you could put like an imp there that's concerned about how long.
Yeah, that too. An NPC.
They've been gone who like wants to go with you, or even like you have the Archmage and Yshtara. You could have like a young apprentice who is beseeching these individuals, these party members, to help them.
Yeah. Well, what I never mentioned this before, but in my original idea for the pre-campaign, one of the climaxes is essentially the party are present when there is the breakout, and then they essentially get out of town as the town vanishes and goes somewhere else. And so then it becomes like, and then they go to the town expecting to find the NPCs they've known, only to find that generations have passed and now the town is Grimlock's. And so that's kind of... So when they actually delve into the dungeon, I don't think there's going to be any NPCs the party knows. That's just occurred to me. Because that's part of like a sort of a horror moment of like everything you thought you knew is wrong.
That could be a really interesting...
grandchildren, or the names still passed down through generations.
That's partly what I hinted at with, so the townsfolk called you Eternals. And the lore reason of that is because when Mordenkainen or the Archmage or whatever would venture in, subsequent generations, hundreds of years would pass, and it would be the same Archmage every time who hadn't changed at all. And so the grandchildren would tell their grandfathers, oh, maybe if you're lucky, you'll be visited by the Archmage who protects this town. He never seems to change. He's one of the Eternals, you know. And
so what I mean by linking, linking the characters back to the count, like they go elf, it then goes rapid speed, and they come back. They won't know anyone because the NPCs, like the generations have passed.
But there'll be same surnames.
That's what I mean. Surnames is a way of keeping...
Yeah, they're like, where's James Smith? And you're like, oh, over here. And you're like, that's not the James I knew.
Yeah.
And it's just as their name from generations ago. And like,
yeah.
Surnames.
I like that.
Why you're doing it.
It could be really interesting too, where you mentioned that you were thinking of having an older Archmage that became the Seer, and maybe they were the one that wrote the journal. Maybe they're the Archmage that the party knew before, but now it's been those however many years.
So I think the scenario would still be rescue the Archmage from himself, essentially, from his hubris and from this place.
Yeah.
I don't know, that might change. I can't... A rescue mission, maybe not the Archmage, but like an important NPC. I like the idea of the fact that it's kind of like there being an older Archmage, because it's like history repeating itself.
Yeah.
Like you see this guy being consumed by his research and like slowly going mad, and then you see the realization that, oh, this thing that I've been fighting is the same thing that happened to the guy before him. It could happen to this guy.
Can I suggest then, Archmage and Apprentice is the initial people that you do. The Archmage is the first one that is now the Seer. When they come back, it's the Apprentice that you're rescuing, who's now many years older.
Yeah, that could work actually.
A lot of flexibility
that way,
for sure.
That way you still have the two, and then you've got the... So that's just the thought of doing that way.
But isn't Yshtara part of like the whole thing as well?
Yeah, so she essentially has been like a researcher she's like seen Archmages come and go and researching this place. But she's been super, super cautious and like letting the Archmages like sacrifice themselves for her. Like she says, okay, so here comes another one. Let's see what he does. All right, he went in, he transformed, he got fucked up. Okay, make a note of that. And so she's just kind of like...
That's the thing. The question is so Yshtara specifically, she's gonna go in and out of the town, right? She's not gonna be just...
Yeah, so she's gonna be a presence around the town. She's gonna be like I don't know, like she's gonna essentially be apprenticing with the Archmage. Like she's gonna be presenting like, you know, oh, you summoned me, and you know I'm under your beck and call, and I'm gonna help you and do research with you. I know things, but she's gonna be like, yeah, this guy. Let's see what happens to this guy. Is he gonna figure it out? Or is he gonna get fucked up?
The curious thing is that is she gonna be introduced as an Akalath first, or is she gonna have her disguise on?
She's gonna be disguised from the get-go, and she's going to be a friendly face around town. Supposedly, oh, it's the Archmage's wife. Oh, she's so nice. She like comes around. She chats with the kids, and then you know, and there's.
You should definitely make
it. And then people will be suspicious, so they're like, I'm gonna do sense, like divine sense. It's like nothing, because she casts Nystul's magic aura on herself for a year.
I really think that having Y'shtar be really like central to the campaign will make it so that, you know, the reveal when she's actually a Karloth will be like super like, what? You're like 10,000 years old? No.
That's the reveal when she's an Arcanoloth and wants to murder you.
I don't know. But the thing is, she doesn't want to murder you. That's the thing.
Well, that's what
she just wants to.
They're referencing the fact I got murdered.
Yes, that.
I'm referring to Ashe.
So yeah, like you actually, because of the way I've kind of did the story, you kind of entered the campaign in its final act. You entered this dungeon, its final act. So like the mystery of like who she was would have been revealed already. You know, the town had already been transported. You kind of like, so she would have started off as just a friendly face around town. It's just, you know, someone who works with the Archmage, and you know can be seen around, just of course like not too like friendly and involved, but you know polite and friendly and smiles to people, and sometimes begrudgingly helps the Archmage, like, you know, do little helpful magical chores around town, and she's just kind of there watching, and you know.
You just definitely make it that I think like if any other DMs run this, obviously, a big key would making Y'shtar an NPC that the character's just like, oh, there she is, yeah, we love her, like she's amazing, and then you know, just like exactly right, like just like, oh yeah, she's amazing, I'm awesome, and then they get invested, like Y'shtar went missing, what? Wait, the Archmage went missing? No, Y'shtar, we have to go save her.
Well, in disguise, her name is just Tara. So in the journal, you said like there's mention of this person Tara, and it's like, oh, who's Tara? And it was her. So
that makes sense.
Okay, there's another way of doing it as well, is having split campaign, where the first group is in the town before it all happens, and then just not there when it happens. Have their children or descendants come back and do the second part.
That certainly, but that's not something I think I'd write.
Yeah, that's
something I'd write as part of it.
That'd be up to the DMs, right? If they wanted to do that. If like this, especially if they really like this dungeon, they could make this a central focus of just like their campaigns for sure.
Yeah. So that's pretty much the backstory, like, and the lore of this place, like, pretty solid. I don't think I've missed anything, actually. Town where weird things going on. There's an Archmage who's studying. He's got research, and his supposedly wife that's actually a rumor around town. It's like, oh, do you think they're married, or do you think they're, you know, like, what's the rumor? It's like, there's kind of like people are gossiping about them, and really one's just a fiend. So it's like it's
purely transactional.
Exactly, yeah. But they kind of like keep up the appearances, and like I think I might want to play that for jokes, almost like, you know, so like yes, darling, and then she's just like dying inside because like I'm a fucking Arcanoloth and I have to pretend to be this fucker's wife or something, you know.
That'd be nice. That's fine.
And then yeah, and yeah, so the rest I think is just individual rooms in the dungeon, and so if there's anything in particular that you're curious about that you...
One thing I did want to ask about the Far Light Behemoth is if we ran from him into the garden where it disappeared, would we have gone into the garden and the Far Light Behemoth would have disappeared afterwards?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, so if you look at the map, the Y'shtar's map,
because that garden was part of Tesseract's 3 and 4.
He wasn't.
Yeah, so that was room.
Different layer of Tesseract.
That was room. I think that was room 3. Yeah, I think that was 3. But yeah, so you can see they're all color coded.
Yeah.
And so the behemoth is exclusively in the dark blue one, which is top right. So it can't use the lanterns. It can't switch between them. So that's just his now. And there's actually nothing else in that tesseract. So all those rooms everything's just been destroyed by this thing. So you're wandering around, and at any point you could just wander across a destroyed room, and then suddenly it appears behind you, just coming out from nowhere, in anywhere where it's connected.
If enough creatures succumbed in a different tesseract, would it become another Far Light Behemoth?
Possibly, but narratively, the reason why it's focused there is because the seer and its people sacrifice things to it. So there is one of the rooms is like a sacrifice chamber.
Fun.
Which let me show you.
Is that the one where Ashe was?
No, not quite.
No, that was the chains on top.
So
This thing?
That was the village,
Oh.
which where I hadn't actually, because it was upside down, I hadn't gotten this map up yet. So that's where Ava was jumping from place to place, upside down, trying to rescue Ashe.
Oh.
So you can see there's the orb on the desk, and there's the hole leading downwards in the crystal, and then up here, that's the sacrifice chamber. So it's offshoots from the village, and it's like a suspended platform. And if I go on the GM layer, beneath which is old buddy guy.
Our favorite friend, literally the just pure white token.
Yeah. And then so there's also there is so that partly connected here is that rickety bridge, if you recall, that you saw in the distance beyond the Far Light room.
Oh wait, is this where we turn him to a bird? This is where we turn him to a bird.
Yeah, that's
where I turned him into a hummingbird.
So this is where the flipped side of that room is. It's connected to the village, and then if you'd fallen down in that beneath the bridge, you would have fallen into here, where this crystal is like the rock has become alive and attacks.
Oh,
Hey.
That's an encounter. Which is
you're welcome for turning you into a bird.
This is a creature from Tome of Beasts.
This
which
is cool artwork. Oh my gosh.
It's so pretty.
It's not specific. Oops. What is it? Shift Z to show the players.
Shift Z, yep.
Shift Z. Yeah, that's from Tome of Beasts. That's not really what it looks like. It would be green. It would be. I don't know if the face would be there. Face gives it too much personality for a mindless force.
Face would work for it, I reckon. Just
maybe
screaming.
twisting and twisting and changing faces.
Similarly to your Aurora Borealis.
Kind of, yeah.
Shifter.
That is a. I go filter Tome of Beasts aberration. Clear.
My question is, with the Tome of Beasts being integrated into this as well, are you going to make your own artwork for these certain creatures, or are you gonna?
So that's why I'm doing it by DM's Guild, because the DM's Guild license allows you to use other stuff published on DM's Guild.
Oh, okay.
That's nice.
That's big brain.
Licensing.
Really important.
So, but of course that means I can't publish it anywhere other than DM's Guild.
Yeah.
But that suits me fine. So that is a monster called the Crystalline Monolith, which is it's got psionic spellcasting. It can dominate person. It's got a slam attack, psychic burst, and it's got a legendary. It's got legendary actions as well, and layer actions. So yeah, but it's only challenge 7. It's only challenge 7, so it's not. It doesn't pack a huge punch, but it can do a lot.
Yeah. they're gonna run into that. Players are gonna run into this, and they're gonna think that this is like the boss, like Wizard of Oz. This is the boss of the dungeon, basically. It's just like, oh, it's a giant
There's a
face
lot-
in the ground.
There's a lot of encounters like that.
Yeah.
Essentially,
Like
there's
the
a lot
seer?
of potential.
Which
Yeah,
we just
there's a lot of mini bosses, is what I think
Yeah.
of it. It's like there's that. There's the
I mean-
there's the
Behemoth?
behemoth.
feels
well, the
like the
behemoth is a
Dark
tyrant.
Souls
The
of
behemoth is a
D&D.
run or die.
I think it's
Yeah.
a really good way to make all your encounters very memorable, having mini bosses of basically at each one, because I think fighting in this dungeon is the last resort. It should be, at least. Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then
That's
if we
the
go
whole
to this
idea.
map, this map is one you never got. You didn't see any rooms of this map. Actually, that's not
Mm.
true. You saw this pool here.
Yes. In the
Um,
distance.
Actually, wait. You've not.
This is the
you've got
Hezru.
not-
This is
We
the
saw
Hezru.
this.
This is also the Hezru
Can you see?
place. Yeah, we can see this.
Yeah.
This is the Hezru
Oh, yeah,
place,
so
and
that-
we've been here
That,
before.
yes, that's connected to the Hezru place. But up here is like a whole underwater section. So parts where you saw like water would lead to this like connecting tunnel,
Mm.
in which
That's
is
terrifying.
It's the Aboleth, right?
Yep, Aboleth and its minions,
Oh boy.
which are scum. Which they're creatures called scum, which are essentially humans transformed into by an Aboleth, and I think they're from Ghost of Saltmarsh.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that would be an Aboleth, but it's also an Aboleth that can cast Feeble Mind because it's trying to impart its eldritch knowledge onto you.
My question
What
is
is
that.
this?
That is a hole in space and time.
Oh, how
I
delightful!
was about to say black hole.
It's essentially
Just throw it away. Black hole.
it's like it's not a sphere of annihilation. It's like essentially the best way I can think about it is if it's like if you are a flat person on a piece of paper, that's a hole punched through the paper.
Mm.
It's
And
the
so-
point in space time where nothing never exists, like the
Yeah, so you
eye
could,
on
like-
top of the
you-
pyramid.
So you could put your hand through it and take it back out, and nothing would happen. But like with a check of some sort, like make a perception check, and they'd be like, "Oh wait, you can move your hand in a direction you've never experienced before," and you could like move your hand through the fourth dimension, and like it would be like it would again cause a intelligence penalty. Because your
Yeah.
just mind can't process what the hell is going on, and then you have to like pull your hand out, and it's just like, ugh. And then also something would like there's this again, Tome of Beasts. A lot of inspiration came from Tome of Beasts. There is this, it is an ooze, but it's like a half aberration, half ooze monster, which is like a space ooze, eldritch ooze.
Oh
like
God.
several eldritch oozes would just like manifest out of it and just like form out of it and attack. And they have great abilities like maddening form. When the creature with an intelligence of 3 or higher can see the eldritch ooze, it can make a DC 14 wisdom check and take 2d6 damage and be incapacitated at the end of its turn. So just like nothing. But it's like one of those things like a Medusa where you can avoid looking at it to not have to make the check.
And
but then it's
take
just like-
minuses to attack or
Exactly.
disadvantage. And yep.
Oh yeah, this one's fun. And it's attack. It's pseudopod attack, which only gets 1 per round. Hits, deals psychic damage, and DC 14 wisdom or intelligence score reduced by 1d4. So again, just like the sapping away of intelligence is again a theme. It's like an archmage's bane, this place. You know,
Yeah.
so the more intelligent you are, the more you want to study it, the more it just erodes your mind, and so
I
you
was-
just get dumber. and
All the
dumber
wizards
as
that
you-
come here are going to be
I would-
destroyed.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I was gonna say this whole dungeon has made me the like perfect equivalent of a high-end, absolutely no wisdom character. Because you explain, oh yeah, this like you would have to make an intelligence save. And I'm still like, oh. But I kinda want to anyway. And I'm like, I know I shouldn't. Everything you're literally telling me don't do this, but I'm like, oh. What's the
So
button?
what other interesting rooms did you miss?
A lot.
There's a lot. There's quite a
I
few.
swear this would be like a YouTube series.
So what
The
was up
amount
with
of
that wall?
The wall. Which
Was
one?
it just a wall
Yes.
in the
It was
diamond
literally
chamber?
that was an when my like puzzling together the rooms and how they connected failed, and like it was a case of like if I make this connect then that connection breaks, and then if I try and fix it then that connection breaks, and then this connection breaks. Fuck it, I'll put a wall there.
But yeah, it's a wall.
I love
It's
that as
just a
well
wall.
because had we stayed in there longer, I would have been agonizing over that for like days, weeks,
It was
months.
just a wall.
It's just a wall.
It's
That
just
is
a chair.
sometimes the best technique for a DM to use. I love it.
Let's see. There was a room. There was a room with nothing but a single pillar in it, and what the room is. In fact, it's a mirror. The room is a mirror, but it's not like you. So you, as you enter the door, on the opposite side of the room, a mirror of you enters the door, and it copies your movements exactly. And you kind of walk around, and you can walk to the other side of the room, and go through the opposite door, and your party's there, like saying like, "What's going on? What your mirror just came and walked in through the door. You're the mirror." And it's not a mirror. It's just space warped. So that you think you walk to the opposite side of the room, but you just walk in a circle, and you see like yourself, like kind of do that.
Can you interact
And,
with
like,
yourself?
You,
I guess
if you
not,
attack
'cause
your-
you
if
would-
you attack your,
You would go on
if you-
different
You
sides.
take damage.
No, you. So there's a pillar in the middle which stops you like walking directly into each other.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how that would work.
Glass
I
pillar.
tried to think of it and it didn't make sense. So I just thought, okay, there's a pillar. You can't actually walk into each other because if you try and walk into them, you just hit the pillar.
Yeah.
But if you were
have
to
a glass
range
pillar,
attack,
you can go around, and you can't go towards each other. So if you go right, he goes right, and you're both circling around.
exactly,
You can't
yeah. So
physically
no
go
matter
through
how
that.
you do it, you're always on opposite sides, and you can never touch each other. But
I've
if you were
got
to
a mission,
range attack,
magic missile.
yeah, you could magic missile, and
It'll go
they
around.
would it would exactly that. It would two magic missiles would go whoosh and hit each other at the same time, and you'd take the damage. You'd attack yourself because it's not a reflection; it's you. Just
Yeah, if it's a big
light is
glass
just
pillar,
warped and
they can't do a direct bow or crossbow or anything like that. They can't throw something, but some spells will go
yeah.
around like
But
magic missile.
if the party did, like so if this guy's walking around circles like doing with the
the
reflection,
other guy can go
like
the
to attack
the
this
party
guy,
member can go that way.
then the party member would reach out, throw something, and then they would see on the opposite door the party member go out and attack as well because it's reflection. It's the same. So that's like a kind of like a trap almost
Yeah.
because it's. So that's one thing that's in
Yeah,
there.
that's gonna
There's
happen.
there's an infinite staircase which just loops back on itself,
I saw that.
which is
yes,
actually
yes,
the
yes.
sideways. So you saw part of it sideways, where if you flipped, it would have been the right way up, and you was an infinite staircase going looping up and down.
I like it. So that's yep.
So that's your version of the Stairmaster. Got it.
Yep, there is. The only room I didn't figure out, which is the one room which is I think the most interesting. But basically, it was a room where I had a really cool encounter / trap, but I hadn't designed a puzzle, an interesting way to get out of there. So it's like, as is, you did go in there and they'd die, and that would be it, and there's no way to get out. I need to think of a way to like make it an interesting challenge to get out, which is not just a fight. But I didn't in time. But you never even went close to there, so it wasn't a problem. Essentially,
Oh.
Talking about that, I want to jump on that right now. So for those that watched the early episodes, as in the first ones, how prepared were you to launch this when we were getting into this dungeon? How many rooms were ready? how many functions already.
The first time we entered this dungeon, the first Tesseract, and that was it.
Yeah. Just wanted to come.
Like,
I
vastly underestimated how long it would take to make these maps, and so much time I was spending just making maps, almost right up until the episode went live.
There was
And I was like, hi, how are you doing? Great, I can't wait for the game. And as I upload the map and drag it and
we had a half an hour pre-show,
so
generally
disorganized.
speaking, in theory, and a lot of the times, at least the early ones, you were still making maps in that pre-show.
And the amount of transmog you were doing at the same time as well.
Yeah, there was a lot of work going on, and a lot of, and how much did it piss you off that the API which you found, which would teleport people from a stair here to another one there, which seamlessly, and it didn't work.
That pissed me off so much, because that
So it
would
worked
have
once.
been, it worked once, and it would have been when I do release this, I'm going to release I don't know if you can package up these Roll20 maps and release them, but I'm going to try and do that with the API. So, all right, here's all the objects, and you just need to download it, and it should work and ready to go. And so the idea is, if I go back to, are we on this first map? Yeah, we are.
Yes.
So if I just take Burlock's token, for instance, and if
I'll show the map again.
Yeah, no, it doesn't work. But basically, this room, when I'm making these maps, I just took this room, cut and pasted it, rotated it, and stuck it there, and then just blacked it out. So that the idea of when you're traveling through is you see that room, think, oh, what's in here? You step in and go poof, right there, without seamlessly. It's like, oh, this is the room. It looks like where I just came from, and you look back and it goes triangular. So I go back and poof, you're there. And that's what it's meant to do. Didn't work.
I
think it's also easy to see here, in this little section, because you can see there's kind of the pattern on the ground, and you see the ghost. You go through, oh, what's going on? Boom, you teleport here. Oh, there's the pattern on the ground. There's the ghost. And you can just about see the pillars in the shape of the room you left behind. So you go back and then boom, you're there. And it kind of is a way of, in 2D, emphasizing the way things are connected non-Euclidean way. How 3 right angles make a full circle. If that makes sense.
Okay. Again, another question. The strange symbols.
Those are the
depictions
mathematical
of dimensions.
Yep, those are the mathematical. I can't remember exactly what they're called. It's the it's a type of projection. It is a coxector coxector plane, which it's literally, I don't know, I've not studied that. It's literally just on the Wikipedia page for Penteract.
Okay.
But it is a projection of a Penteract. So those symbols, if I pull up the this one,
I just had it up on screen.
Yeah, that is literally a dot, a line, a square, a cube, a tesseract, a Penteract.
I see.
What was the intelligence check, or what check we have to do to actually understand that one?
I drew those a lot.
So
I drew them a lot.
So with the book, so without the book you couldn't. There was I would say without the book DC 30, which is doable with
legendary
with guidance, so maxed out intelligence, guidance, and Flash of Genius.
And Bending Luck, and Flash of Genius, and an activity.
So it's
dice, donations.
Yeah, but then if you were reading the book and sort of trying to understand it through the book, the advanced geometry book, I didn't just throw that in for shits and giggles. It tied into the dungeon. Same with the botany book. It was because of the plants and
he
he was studying it. Yeah.
You think
So yeah,
everything's
with the geometry book, it would have been DC 25.
I think
No.
it was.
Still very hard, but doable. More doable. Especially with
I
Flash of Genius. Flash of Genius is so broken. It's great.
It's
I love
so
it.
broken. But
Yeah, but
that's
not
the
many
thing is
people-
that
Not many
It just
parties will
can't-
have it.
yeah, can't do anything else though is the thing. That's my only like I don't have meta magics, I don't have anything else. I mean infusions are just passives. I have so many
that's
passives.
true.
It's the only
Um,
active thing I can do.
Your healing with the
cannon?
temporary
Oh.
healing with the cannon, the
Oh.
That is
flamethrower on
very
the
good.
cannon, the force
That
cannon.
is
they are
come in
all
clutch so many
amazing.
times.
Yeah.
The first time the flamethrower was used wasn't when you were here, and it
Mhm.
just kicked us and changed the fight totally. And that was back in Baldur's Gate.
yeah.
You've only recently brought it out again, and like I remember you actually recently you described it because you had never actually brought it out yourself.
Nope.
But we used it like back in Baldur's Gate.
Yep. The thing about that is that the flamethrower, I mean, it's by the item that Lorian gave me. I don't really use the flamethrower is the thing. I use more long range stuff. I stay in the back.
Yeah.
Because it's just
Yeah.
the way that Ashe plays.
Again,
And we've
I
got three
saw that
fighters.
you fling cantrips a lot, so I gave you
Yeah.
anything that made you better at that.
We also got 3 fighters. So
Yeah.
I
staying
think
True.
back
with
is fine.
the strange symbol, it was easier to put it together once you realized that the third one down or the fourth one up was a cube. And after that, it was easier to work back to, okay, well, that's 3-dimensional. The one before that's 2-dimensional. The one before that's 1-dimensional. And the one before that is in 0 dimensions. So then you could
That's-
extrapolate from that. This must be the 4th. This must be the 5th.
That's
There's the
exactly
logic
the
puzzle.
logic I want. That's exactly the logic I want the players to
Mhm.
like follow. And it's so like a DC check would be like an intelligence check would be saying like the hint would be. So you see a line, you see a dot, a line, a square. Oh, with that you realize that 2 squares connected like that. That's a cube. That's a cube. That is, and that would be what I
Mhm.
get. Oh, you recognize that's a cube. Don't know.
And then from that, you go on my crazy rambling, finding the picture of the cube and then the picture of the tesseract.
You
and then-
literally projected a cube like that. You did the projection as well. That's great.
I did. I spent far too long on that. And then my intelligence crashed, and I was like, well, Reservoir doesn't know any of that shit.
But I know.
I was like, but it was really fun to figure out, like, personally. I probably spent a good few hours just staring at that. I love it so much.
There's been discussions afterward,
What
after
other
games,
Oh yeah.
post game and pre game about maps and bits and pieces and like how
It's
things
so
work.
beautiful.
Yeah. So yeah. I mentioned this tunnel. It's actually the only map that I haven't put on here. So because it's almost finished except for that. Essentially, it's adjacent to the spiral stairs. You like go down the spiral stairs and you're like, oh, there's a door here. Let's see where this goes. And you enter an infinite corridor. Or at least it seems infinite, but you see images of yourself repeating, going off into infinity. Because what it actually is a loop. But so
All
you
of
could,
yours.
yeah, kind of. But you don't reflect. So you just, if you were to walk off in one direction, you'd walk forever, and then the rest of the party would see the reflection off in the distance just approach, and come and say, "Hi, it's them," because what they've done actually is just like gone round in a circle, but to their perspective, it's a straight line. Where it becomes creepy is when the door shuts behind you, and you're suddenly stuck here, and then you're waiting, and something's not right, and then in the distance, off in infinity, it gets brighter.
Oh.
Brighter. And
Can I
even though it's a
suggest
loop, it's you this, and that would only happen once the players realize it's a loop. Oh, it's just a circle. It's like Portal. Remember, if you ever played the game Portal, you've made like a portal facing each other, and you've just gone walking straight through. It's literally just like that. Oh wait, now there's light on either side. Oh no, the light's getting closer. How does that work? Because it's supposed to be a loop. Like, where's this coming from? And it's just getting closer and closer. And like, perception checks, the reflections are like twisting and like misshaping and like elongating in the light before they vanish. And it's just like, and gradually you start taking psychic damage, and it's eventually there'd be like a fight or an encounter with something, but you can't see it. You're not fighting anything, but your reflections are hitting something, but you can't see. So you have to like look at where they're fighting, and then it gets like a bit creative and weird like that. And,
I would
but
suggest like a horror mirrors.
Yeah, kind of. But that
the
was
only
that.
instance in which dimension dooring and appearing in a random room might seem like a good idea.
Yeah. So it kind of was inspired a little bit by Junji Ito, if you know that manga,
Yes.
horror artist, where his like, as the light like envelops the reflections, like they like fucking go Junji Ito horror, like the elongate and the limbs twist and like distort. But wait, that's supposed to be the same. That's supposed to be like a loop. It doesn't make sense. Like if you try and break that down logically, no, this is a loop. That's me, but it's not meant to make sense. It's meant to be eldritch horror. It's meant to be confusing and weird, and so
Maybe crystals. Reflecting crystals.
That's kind of like a trap. And so what I did not figure out in time is this is the puzzle to get you out of there.
Oh, I see.
So I thought like I'd try to come up with different ideas, but it all seemed too gamey, like Dungeons and Dragons, like, oh, here's the click these in order, or like I just couldn't figure out something that was like
organic
horror,
organic. Yeah. It wasn't really corny.
Covering the mirror, covering the reflections, smashing the reflections.
It's not a mirror.
But they
that's the
aren't
thing.
reflections.
They're not reflections. That's the point.
Maybe they're just, if you don't look at them, they don't exist.
Maybe like this is something I'm going to brainstorm going forward.
Yeah.
But that is like one of the first rooms I came up with, is the idea of like a looping corridor, but it was an idea I saw from it was a short horror comic where someone was in one of these elevators with mirrors on both sides, and they're looking at the reflections of themselves in the mirror, and then they saw like a shadowy figure in like one part, like next to one of the distant reflections. And like the shadowy figure just kind of like touched their reflection. That reflection like twisted and distorted, and then gradually the reflection moved up one reflection, and then up one reflection, and then up, and then But so that was the inspiration for that.
Was this room 7? Because we were warned about room 7.
Yes, that was room 7.
Room 7.
Which actually. The way to get out of there, you're in Tesseract 1. The way to get out of there, if you see, this is actually part of that corridor.
Mm-hmm.
And it is the only way out is to find the mechanism to unlock this hidden wall where you find this lantern.
I was wondering what that weird chamber was.
So,
nice.
Yeah, so you're in this corridor, which in the map it stretches out continuously, and I'll have with these teleport things set up, so if you were to walk there, you'd teleport to the other side. And the puzzle would be what opens this secret wall.
Mm-hmm. Can I also ask then, what is this chamber? Because we got a couple weird chambers that we never saw on this map.
Which chamber?
By the laboratory.
That, again, that is a secret. That is not connected to anything in this, but in the mirror reflection, it's connected to the same place as the aboleth. So if you see, that's connected here.
Ah.
So that's kind of like, it's a one-way. So when you're in the laboratory, you can't find that. It's a secret exit. But if you were to come the other way, you see, all right, what's this weird chamber? There's a switch here. Flip it. Well, now there's a wall where we just came from, and there's nothing around. So what's the deal? You look around, you find a hidden button, which would click open a secret door into where the shield guardians were. So that would open this door, and then you could go into the chamber. And that kind of works like almost like a Dark Souls design, where it's a shortcut back to the start, back to the bonfire.
I like that.
And there's a couple of those scattered around. At least I tried to design there to be a couple of those scattered around.
Of which we found none.
All right, well,
to
let's
be
play.
fair, we were only in there for 2 days.
Yeah.
Somehow.
All right, well, let's play this over again. Let's just forget everything. Let's just go again.
Yeah, if only that were possible. Oh yeah, so in this room, for instance, there's this room here, which is where the flaming skeleton was. There's this so the other side of the astral sea room is where the treasure room is.
It's the treasure room.
Because
Guys.
lore-wise, this is where Githyanki pirates store their stolen loot. Because this is open to the astral sea, like the Githyanki you saw riding on the dragon. It is just a breach in the dimensions which connects to the astral sea. And all sorts of... When you go into that room, there's like a random table of what you could encounter.
Mhm.
A 20 of which is an astral dreadnought.
Oh.
Yeah. So yeah, it's so yeah. If you go in there, roll a 20 on the counter table, an astral dreadnought comes at you. It's easier to run away from because it can't fit through any of the doors, but still, that'd be a memorable encounter. But yeah, so
No spelljammer?
What's-
Damn.
what's fun about this is that it's secret because there's no when you're in here, there's no way to flip. So the only way to get there, and in this room, which is the time room, where the time shrinks is in the center, where you took the long rest, you can't flip there either. So you have to go the long way around and find that room again, and only then, on the opposite side, can you get to this treasure chest, this treasure chamber.
So, can I ask how those lanterns became broken?
Being studied by Mordenkainen and Arch, they try to figure out how they worked, tinkered, and then they broke.
Should have tinkered in more useless rooms. Silly Archmage.
Exactly. Just like, well, this one's conveniently located in... I've set my study up conveniently around this. Let's have a look. I'm just trying to think of, are there other interesting tidbits? Because it's actually getting a little late. Oh yeah,
We can finish up now.
yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Just a few fun notes. So this room here is
Be
part.
specific, because
that-
I need to zoom out to then
Yeah, I'm kind of highlighting,
where
like.
We
Can
can't
you-
see.
bottom where.
Oh, wait, can you not? When you ping, right side of the map, where the tunnel with the lights in it is.
Okay, just shift ping.
Where
if
the
you can.
behemoth is.
Wrong map.
We are not
Are you on the wrong
that
map? Oh, you're not on the right
Oh, no,
map.
no,
I'm
no.
dumb. I'm dumb.
We're on treasure room.
Yeah.
This is a map we haven't even done yet today.
You have. This is where you fought
No,
the.
we've been
No,
here.
today.
This-
That's where Ashe.
Let's have
That's
that
where Ashe was
loaded.
kidnapped.
Oh, this
so-
map. I remember this map very very vividly.
So this room here,
I'm having flashbacks.
Yes.
that room is, when flipped, is part of the Endless Fall. So you go there, like, all right, let's flip this lantern. You flip it, and the character just goes ah and falls sideways.
That can be
And then
bad.
eventually
I
they're just
love
waiting, like, where the fuck did they go? And then suddenly they appear from the other side, ah, ah, like that, until the
And then the behemoth appears.
then the behemoth appears. As I think I'm just trying to think of like any last like other than because there's some rooms which are just like here's a random encounter, here's a weird connection. I think that's mostly the really interesting bits that you didn't encounter.
But the thing is, this whole map is a toolbox.
Yeah.
You can, the DMs who get this one can actually put their own stuff in there.
Oh yeah.
And that's what really makes a good dungeon.
It's so much fun.
It's really
It's
cool.
So much fun.
It's so good. I like this a lot, actually. I honestly, I want to try to run this, but holy moly, it's gonna be
So
gonna be something.
what I do want to do as part of this book. In fact, let's go to the landing page because we haven't done that in a while. What I want to do as part of this book is a lot of the weird effects, like the way the rooms go together, and the way, like, if you transfer, you go half invisible. I'm gonna do the thing they did in that video, which is like have a little box on the side which explains it in 2D versus 3D, and then just say, okay, just now imagine it up one dimension. And it would be like one of those recurring boxes, which is like dimension tip, dimension explain, and this page is like, all right, here's how this works in 2D. Now imagine it in 3D.
That was really helpful when you sent that. I was like, I listened to a lot of words, but I understood none of it. And then you were like, oh, watch this one. And I was like, now I understood.
That's what made it click.
A teeny bit of it.
So yeah, that's
if you
my
want to
madness.
finish, we can wrap up, and we'll do a raid as well. So we're going to be raiding the TTRPG Academy. They're doing their episode 1, The Descendants, and so The Descendants episode 1. Looks like they're doing some work with Tailspire, which, if you haven't seen it before, it's a 3D mapping utility thing which looks amazing, and they're playing a 1920s terra firma campaign thing. Yep.
Couple things before we go. Number one, I need to ask you a question, Del. When I start promoting this thing, can I make a compilation of your reactions to my bullshit for promotion?
Yes.
If you need the raw footage, I've got them all.
Please just get that one where you explain it to Ashe and I just die in the background.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking of. It's just like it's gonna be like the ending one is just like, yeah, every room is in 2 tesseracts at the same time. Just that one sentence, like, devoid of any context, and you go like, look at this. It's going to be like. It's going to be like the main part of the promo video.
And then like the 10 tesseracts and there's like, I think it was 6 cubes in 1 tesseract and 10 tesseracts in a penta, and I was just like, oh my.
Yeah. Lorian, if you can
also
find the timestamps, I have go on YouTube, find the timestamps, and I can get the raw footage for you.
At the end of the episode, I need to quickly credit the individual artists whose Battle Bards tracks I used. So that would be Richard Descas, that would be Falling Petals, which is Falling Petals, Phil Stokes, and Stephanie Lorella. Okay.
So we'll be back next week with the Extinction Curse. Thanks for sticking around. We're going to be raiding TPRPG Academy. I said they're doing it in episode 1. They're using Tailspire. It looks really cool. And thank you, everyone. We don't need to do the whole shout out again. We know who we are. But it was nice to sit back and just talk about something you should. Yes?
I actually do have an announcement, though. And that tomorrow I'll be releasing a new song.
Oh.
Ooh.
Yes.
So,
we saw you working on it.
Yeah, it's pretty much done. It's a song I wrote. It's a fan song for the end of Critical Role's second campaign. And yeah, I've just finished it today instead of prepping for tonight's game.
I was going to point out.
Yep, and I'm really, really pleased with how it's turned out. It's mostly instrumental. There's only a couple of like verses where I sing, but I think it makes it more impactful, and I'm yeah, it's going to be out tomorrow, pretty much at the same time where Critical Roles airs, to try and get the most out of the hashtag.
Yes,
Cool.
yes.
One day we'll make a
Cool.
marketer out of you yet.
Oh, boy, that's going to be a long time coming.
Well, you know where I am.
Okay, so we're going to be rating TTRPG Academy. Thanks for coming in. I do have a credits roll, so we've got that as well.
Grim
We
music.
may be switching over to this overlay
is already
for
playing.
future games. This was just a very rough move over because I know we were doing a lot of stuff after the show without the map. So I wanted this one because it had us bigger, and we didn't need the map as much. But thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lorian, for this really weird dungeon.
Incredible, fantastic, amazing,
It is a
stunning,
doozy. I like this a lot.
beautifully intricate, intellectual dungeon.
Another adjective in there? I didn't think you had enough.
I don't think I had enough either, but it's really late and I woke up really early, so.
Yeah.
This dungeon definitely added more wrinkles onto my brain for sure.
Okay, so we're going to raid. Stick around. Say hello for everyone. Go and share the love. We come to share the love. Our hearts are warm and fresh is our raid message. If you're a member of the channel, spam that one with the Goblin Hearts. If you're not, just do it without the Goblin Hearts. Thank you, everyone, for coming in. It's been interesting. It's been nice to be able to chat, just relax after the show as well.
Yeah, it's been a different vibe, especially after the intense first half.
Yeah.
It was an emotional one, a very emotional one. So that's.
I wanted to get I did the Battle Bard's whole shenanigans specifically for those tracks that I used.
Yeah. A lot of stuff in the backgrounds just for those tracks. Thank you everyone for coming in.
All right, catch you next week.